The galaxy was endless, filled with billions of stars and countless civilizations. At the very center of this shining ocean sat the throne of stars, a palace carved from crystal moons and burning comets. Here ruled the Galactic Queen, a woman of unmatched power, beauty, and pride. For centuries she had been courted by kings, emperors, warlords, and even creatures made of living energy. All had begged for her hand. All had promised treasures, armies, and eternal loyalty. But her answer was always the same. She denied them all. None were worthy, none strong enough, none clever enough, none pure of heart enough. Her rejection became legend, a story told across star systems. Entire wars had been fought to impress her, and empires had fallen when she dismissed them. Yet her throne never shook, her pride never bent. She remained untouchable, the queen who would never be claimed. The audience chamber of her palace stretched like a galaxy itself. Columns of light rose high into the air, glowing with the energy of captured suns. Alien nobles from every corner of space stood waiting, their jeweled robes heavy with gold and stardust. They had gathered to witness another attempt, another challenger who dared to seek the impossible. Whispers passed through the hall like sparks. For this time, the challenger was not a mighty alien king, not a warlord, not a creature of endless strength. This time it was a human. Captain Elias Kane walked slowly into the Queen's hall. His boots echoed against the crystal floor. His uniform was worn from battles long past. He had no crown, no army, no treasures. Only his scarred face, his sharp eyes, and the steady courage in his steps. The nobles laughed, their voices rising in cruel music. "What is this fragile creature doing here?" one hissed. "He will be crushed before the first trial." Another sneered. "Humans are weak, their lifespan short, their bodies fragile." A third whispered. But Elias did not turn, did not answer. His eyes stayed on the throne. The queen sat high above them all. Her gown shimmered with galaxies woven into silk. Her crown blazed with the light of captured stars. She looked down at him with the cold eyes of eternity. To her, he was just another foolish soul ready to die for a dream. And yet, something about his calm unsettled her. Most challengers trembled, shouted, or begged for her attention. But this man simply walked as if he already belonged here. At last, the queen raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. The nobles bowed. The air itself seemed to freeze. Her voice was music and thunder, soft and deadly. "You dare stand before me, human," she said. "Countless kings and warlords have tried. All have failed, and all have died. What gives you the right to stand in my hall, to demand what no one has claimed?" Elias Kane bowed his head, not in weakness, but in respect. "I did not come with armies or gifts," he said, his voice steady. "I did not come with lies or empty promises. I come only as a man who believes no throne is higher than truth, no crown brighter than courage." A wave of mocking laughter rose from the nobles. They thought him foolish, simple, already doomed. But the queen did not laugh. Her lips curved slightly, not in kindness but in curiosity. This human spoke not like a king, not like a warrior desperate to impress. He spoke as if he feared nothing. And fear was the language the queen knew best. "You will face the trials," she declared, her voice echoing across the crystal walls. "3 challenges that no one has ever passed. Strength, wisdom, and heart. Fail once, and you will die. Succeed, and you may ask for anything, even me." The hall erupted, voices crashing like thunder. The idea of a human passing even one trial was absurd. The thought of him winning all 3 was madness. But Elias Kane only nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then let the trials begin," he said, and for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Queen leaned forward. Not in mockery, not in anger, but in interest. The hall grew quiet, the nobles watching with narrowed eyes. Some eager to see him die, some curious to see how long he would last. The queen's heart, cold as frozen stars, felt a tremor it had never known. This was not like the others. This human was different. And though she would never admit it aloud, she wanted to see how far he could go. In that moment, under the burning light of 1,000 suns, the impossible had begun. The hall was still buzzing after the Queen's declaration. Every noble, every warrior, every dignitary whispered the same thing. The human would fail. He had to fail. It was not possible for such a fragile creature to survive what countless alien champions had faced. Yet Captain Elias Kane stood calmly, his hands at his sides, his gaze steady on the throne. He had walked battlefields drenched in smoke. He had fought against machines that did not bleed. And he had lived through silence, the silence of comrades lost to war. To him, the stares of 1,000 alien eyes were nothing. He carried no crown, no weapon of legend, no armor forged in suns. All he carried was a soldier's scars, the lessons of survival, and the heart that refused to bend. The Queen studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. This was no trembling boy chasing glory, nor was he a king hiding behind promises of armies and riches. This human carried something different, something that made the chamber feel unsteady. She narrowed her eyes, then raised her hand once more. "The first trial begins now," she commanded. "Strength will decide if you are worthy to take even a single step forward." A massive door of molten steel opened at the far end of the chamber. Heat rolled out like the breath of a dying sun. From the shadows within, a roar erupted, a sound that made the walls tremble. The nobles gasped, for they knew what was coming. The Queen's beast, the plasma serpent, a creature born from the heart of a collapsed star. It was a monster made of fire and lightning, its body a river of burning energy. No blade had ever pierced it. No shield had ever blocked its fury. Every challenger before had been reduced to ash in its jaws. The serpent slithered into the hall, its body crackling with flames, its eyes burning like twin comets. The floor sizzled wherever it moved, melting into rivers of glowing crystal. It reared its head, towering above Kane like a mountain of living fire. The nobles shouted with excitement. "Now the human dies," one sneered. "He will burn before he even raises a hand." Another laughed. But Kane did not flinch. His eyes scanned the beast, every movement, every crackle of energy. He knew he could never match it in size, never meet its power with brute force. But strength was not always muscle, not always fire. Sometimes strength was in patience, in strategy, in the courage to face fear head-on. The serpent lunged, a storm of plasma surging forward. Kane rolled aside, the heat scorching his arm as the ground behind him exploded. The crowd roared, half in laughter, half in thrill. But the human was already moving, already thinking. He noticed how the beast's body dimmed when it struck, how the energy surged strongest when it coiled to attack. Every movement revealed a pattern, a rhythm. He darted left, then right, using the broken floor as cover. The serpent slammed its body down, sending waves of fire across the chamber. Kane shielded his face with his arm, his uniform burning, but he pressed forward, his eyes locked on the creature's core. There, deep within the raging plasma, he saw it, a pulsing light, a weak point where the energy gathered before each strike. The nobles watched in disbelief as the human rushed toward the monster instead of fleeing. The serpent hissed, fire raining down from its jaws. But Kane dove beneath its body, rolling across molten cracks. He snatched a shard of broken crystal from the floor, still burning hot. With all his strength, he drove it into the glowing core at the serpent's chest. A scream like thunder ripped through the hall. The beast convulsed, its body flickering as though a storm inside it was breaking apart. It writhed, slammed against the floor, walls shattering, sparks raining like meteors. And then, with one final shriek, the plasma serpent collapsed. Its flames burned out, its body dissolving into drifting ashes of light. Silence fell, heavy and impossible. The nobles stared with wide eyes, unable to believe what they had seen. A human, a mere human, had slain the queen's beast. Some shouted that it was a trick, others demanded another trial. But none could deny the truth before their eyes. High above them, the queen remained seated. Her fingers tapped the arm of her throne, her lips curved ever so slightly. For the first time in centuries, she had seen something unexpected. The human had not used power or glory, but wit, endurance, and courage. It stirred something dangerous inside her, something she had buried long ago. Interest. Elias Cain stood in the center of the ashes, his chest heaving, his face marked with burns. But his eyes never left the throne, never left her. "I am still standing," he said, his voice rough but steady, "and I am ready for what comes next." The queen's eyes glimmered like twin galaxies. "Very well," she said slowly. "You have passed the first trial, human, but strength alone is nothing without wisdom." Her voice lowered, sharp as a blade. "Let us see if your mind can survive what your body has endured." The chamber's floor shifted, the lights dimmed, and doors of starlight opened to the second trial. The nobles whispered once more, their fear growing where laughter had been. For the queen herself had leaned forward, not with mockery, not with anger, but with anticipation, and the human, scarred and weary, walked without hesitation into the next challenge. The chamber of strength was gone, swallowed by the shifting walls of the queen's palace. Now Elias Cain stood in a new hall, vast and silent, where the floor itself looked like glass holding the endless stars beneath it. Above him, constellations shimmered, spinning slowly, forming and reforming shapes that no human tongue could name. It was as if he had stepped into the heart of the galaxy itself. The nobles filled the edges of the chamber, whispering again, their laughter cautious this time. The queen's beast had been slain, and though many still believed the human survival was nothing more than luck, their eyes betrayed unease. Even the queen sat differently now, not slouched in cold boredom, but leaning slightly forward, her eyes sharp. "She want to see more?" Her voice rang out, soft and dangerous. "Strength may break walls, but wisdom opens the doors that strength cannot. Here lies your second trial, human, the trial of wisdom." Before him, beams of light rose from the floor, weaving together into a massive star map. Planets glowed like pearls, suns blazed in miniature, entire nebulae swirled in sparks of colored fire. It was a puzzle of the cosmos, a map of forgotten routes, each line shifting and breaking like rivers made of starlight. The queen's eyes glimmered. This is the path of the lost, a riddle older than empires. No one has solved it, not kings, not scholars, not even my ancestors. Find a path that leads from the dying star to the cradle world, or you will remain here until your mind breaks. The hall fell silent, only the hum of the glowing puzzle filling the air. Elias Cain looked up at the shimmering web, his face calm, though his body still carried burns from the serpent's fire. To the nobles, it looked impossible. Stars scattered endlessly, shifting every moment, symbols of alien design flashing across them like riddles in forgotten tongues. Some nobles smirked again. "He has no chance," one muttered. "Even our brightest minds failed. How can a human solve it?" Another scoffed. But deep inside, their voices carried less conviction than before. Elias took a slow breath. He had no ancient knowledge, no alien education, no special training in celestial riddles. But he had something else, something that had carried him through war and loss. Observation, patience, and the ability to see what others missed. He studied the puzzle, watching the lines flicker and bend. Each star pulsed with light, each pattern shifting in rhythm. To most, it looked like chaos, but Cain saw rhythm beneath the storm. He saw how some lights dimmed when others grew bright, how one movement triggered another. It was not random, it was a living system, a heartbeat of the stars. Hours seemed to pass in silence. The nobles grew restless, some mocking him, some waiting for his failure. But Cain ignored them, his eyes tracing the invisible threads. The queen, though silent, could not look away. Her hand rested against her chin, her gaze locked on the human as if he alone carried the weight of the chamber. Finally, Kane moved. He reached out and touched one glowing star at the edge of the puzzle. The map shifted violently, lines breaking apart, sparks scattering like fire. Gasps filled the hall, nobles laughing again. "He has failed," they shouted. "He has no idea." But Kane's hand did not move away. His voice rose steady. "Not failure," he said, "a beginning." One by one, he began connecting the stars, not in the obvious ways, but along hidden threads. He linked faint lights others had ignored, dim ones that flickered as though dying. He traced a path through the fading lights, a route that others would dismiss as weakness. The nobles fell quiet, confusion replacing their smugness. As the final star lit up, the puzzle froze. The lines of light locked into place, glowing brighter, until the entire hall blazed with starlight. A path had been revealed, a line stretching from a dying red star to a small, glowing cradle of life. The chamber itself shuddered, as if recognizing the truth. The riddle was solved. Gasps echoed through the nobles, voices rising in shock. "Impossible," one cried. "No one has ever done this," another whispered. "He saw what the rest of us could not." The queen's lips curved, the faintest trace of a smile. Her heart, cold for centuries, stirred again. This human had not only endured her beast, he had unraveled a puzzle that had mocked empires for generations. He had done what no king, no warrior, no scholar had achieved. He had solved the unsolvable. Kane lowered his hand, his voice calm. "Sometimes the answer is not in the brightest star," he said. "Sometimes it is in the ones everyone overlooks." The queen's gaze locked on him. For the first time, she felt something she could not name. It was not just interest, not just curiosity. It was the spark of respect, dangerous and undeniable. She rose from her throne, her presence filling the chamber like a storm. "Very well, human," she said, her voice carrying both challenge and something softer. "You have passed the second trial. But the third is not strength, nor wisdom, it is far greater." Her eyes narrowed, her voice like a whisper of thunder. "It is the trial of the heart." The chamber shifted again, the puzzle fading into darkness. A new door appeared, glowing with a faint light. The nobles, once loud and mocking, now stood silent, unease spreading across their faces. They had seen the impossible twice, and fear now gnawed where laughter had once lived. Elias Kane walked toward the light without hesitation, his steps steady, his eyes unshaken. And high above, the queen watched him go, her heart beating a little faster than it had in centuries. The human was no longer just a challenger. He was becoming something else, something dangerous, something unforgettable. The starlit chamber dissolved into shadows, and Elias Kane found himself standing in a place unlike any before. The floor was no longer crystal or light, but black stone, cold and sharp beneath his boots. Above him, no stars shone, only a ceiling of shifting clouds that pulsed red as if alive. The nobles lined the walls, though many looked uneasy now. Their mocking voices had grown softer, replaced by whispers. The human had survived strength. He had solved wisdom, and now he stood before the most feared trial of all. The queen's voice rose, calm yet heavy. "Strength can be borrowed, wisdom can be taught, but the heart cannot be faked. This trial will show whether you are more than courage, more than cleverness. It will show if you carry a soul worthy of the impossible." Before Kane, a circle of light appeared. Within it stood a group of beings, fragile, trembling, faces pale with fear. They were not warriors, not nobles, not lords. They were innocents, children and families from a distant colony, bound by chains of glowing energy. Their eyes begged for mercy. The queen's hand lifted, her gaze sharp. "This is the trial of sacrifice, human. The law is simple. Only one may walk free. To save them, you must offer a life in exchange. If you choose one of them, you prove yourself as selfish as the kings who came before you. If you refuse, they will all perish. But if you choose yourself, if you surrender your life, they will live." Gasps filled the chamber, nobles whispering. It was a trial that no one had ever passed. For even the bravest warriors had chosen another to die. Even the wisest scholars had hesitated. And hesitation meant failure. The chains around the innocents glowed brighter, their cries echoing. A child reached out, his voice breaking. "Please, save us." The nobles leaned forward, hungry to see the human break. One sneered, "He will betray them, just like the rest." Another whispered, "No man gives his own life willingly." The queen, however, said nothing. Her gaze was fixed on him, colder than ice, yet burning inside with a strange unease. She wanted to see, no, she needed to see, what choice he would make. Cain's heart pounded in his chest. He had fought wars. He had seen comrades die. He had carried guilt heavier than any weapon. He could walk away. He could argue that the trial was unfair. But when his eyes met those of the trembling families, he knew there was only one path. Slowly, he stepped forward into the circle of light. The chamber grew quiet, silence pressing against every wall. He raised his voice, steady and clear. "Release them, take me instead." The nobles erupted in shouts of disbelief. "He chooses death," one cried. "He is mad," another spat. But Cain did not falter. His voice grew stronger. "No crown, no throne, no empire is worth the lives of the innocent. If my life is the price, then I pay it." The chains around the families flickered, dissolving into sparks. The innocents fell free, vanishing into safety as the light carried them away. And then the circle of light around Cain grew brighter, wrapping him in burning energy. The trial had accepted his choice, and death was ready to claim him. The queen rose suddenly from her throne, her eyes wide for the first time in centuries. Her hand trembled before she clenched it into a fist. She could not allow this. No one had ever chosen true sacrifice. No one had ever dared to give everything. And now this fragile human, this man who had walked into her hall with nothing, was ready to die for strangers. "Enough," she thundered, her voice shaking the chamber. The light froze, halting its deadly embrace. Gasps spread through the nobles, for never had the queen interfered in a trial. Her eyes locked on Cain, and in that gaze was no longer just curiosity or respect. It was something deeper, sharper, more dangerous. She could not let him fall. Not him. The energy dissolved, fading into sparks that vanished into the air. Elias Cain stood alive, his body trembling, but his eyes still steady. He had expected death, but instead he found himself staring at the queen. Her lips parted, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You would give your life so easily." Cain met her gaze. "Life means nothing if it is lived only for oneself," he said. "Strength and wisdom mean nothing without a heart willing to bear the cost." For the first time in centuries, the queen's cold heart cracked. She felt a tremor inside her chest, something she thought had long been buried. It was not weakness, it was not defeat. It was awe. The nobles were silent, their mockery gone, their fear now unspoken. They had seen what no one had ever seen. A human had passed all three trials. Not by power, not by knowledge, but by sacrifice. The queen sat slowly back on her throne, though her eyes never left him. Her voice was quiet, but the weight of it pressed against every soul in the chamber. "The trials are over," she said, "and for the first time in all of history, they have been conquered." She rose, her gown shimmering like galaxies, her presence filling the chamber with light. "Captain Elias Cain," she declared, her voice carrying both command and something softer, "you have claimed the impossible." The chamber erupted, nobles shouting in disbelief, fear, and awe. But the queen did not hear them. Her eyes remained on the human, the man who had walked into her throne room alone, and with nothing but courage and heart. had broken her pride. Forever. The chamber had never been so loud, and yet never so shaken. Nobles shouted in fury, their jeweled cloaks flaring as they pointed and raged. Some cried that the trials were broken. Some demanded the human be executed for daring to challenge fate. Others whispered in fear, for deep inside, they knew what they had seen was real. A human had done the impossible. Elias Cain stood in the circle of fading light, his body weary, his clothes scorched, but his spirit unshaken. He did not raise his arms in victory, nor did he mock those who mocked him. He only stood tall, his eyes fixed on the throne, and high above, the Galactic Queen had not moved. Her gaze locked on him, her fingers curling slowly around the arm of her seat. She had ruled for centuries, untouchable, unmatched, untouched by love or weakness. She had denied kings who brought galaxies in tribute, rejected warlords who bent armies at her feet. She had mocked those who claimed they were chosen by destiny. And yet, before her now stood a human who had nothing. No crown, no riches, no army. Only courage, wisdom, and the heart to sacrifice everything. The queen rose, and at once the chamber fell silent. Even the angriest nobles swallowed their words, for her presence was greater than any voice. She stepped forward, her gown rippling like rivers of starlight, her crown blazing brighter than suns. When she spoke, her voice carried across the hall like a storm. "Enough," she said. "The trials are not broken. They are complete. The human has done what none of you could. Strength, wisdom, and heart. He has conquered all." Gasps spread like wildfire. The nobles could not believe her words, and yet they could not deny them. For centuries they had watched champions fall, and now they had seen one rise. The queen descended the steps of her throne, her eyes never leaving Cain. Each step was heavy with meaning, each step a shattering of the pride she had carried for ages. When she reached the center of the hall, she stopped before him. For the first time, she looked at someone not from her throne, but face to face. The chamber held its breath, the nobles frozen as if carved from stone. Her voice softened, though it still carried the weight of 1,000 stars. "Captain Elias Cain, you came into this hall with nothing. You faced my beast with courage. You solved my riddle with vision, and you gave your life for strangers you did not know. Kings failed, scholars failed, warriors failed, but you did not." Her eyes, cold as the void for centuries, now glimmered with something no one had seen before. She reached out her hand, the air around her trembling as if the galaxy itself bent to her will. "No crown, no throne, no power has ever claimed me. But today, a human has done what was thought impossible." The hall erupted into chaos, nobles shouting, tearing at their robes, some dropping to their knees. Some screamed betrayal, others whispered destiny. But none could stop what was unfolding before their eyes. The queen had chosen. Cain stared at her hand, his chest heavy with the weight of what had just been spoken. He had not come for power, nor for her throne. He had come because he believed no trial, no empire, no ruler should stand above truth and courage. Slowly, he reached forward, his rough soldier's hand touching hers. The hall shook, the very stones trembling as the bond was sealed. The queen's voice rose again, though this time it was not thunder but flame. "Let it be known across the stars," she declared, "that no king, no warlord, no emperor has claimed the queen of the galaxy. But this human has." The nobles collapsed in disbelief, their eyes wide with terror and awe. The story would spread like fire, carried on every ship, whispered in every court. The day the unclaimable was claimed, the day the impossible became true. The queen turned her eyes back to Cain, and for the first time, her lips curved into a true smile. Not one of mockery, not one of pride, but of recognition. "You are no longer a challenger," she said softly, only for him to hear. "You are the one I have waited for, though I did not know it." Elias Cain bowed his head slightly, his voice steady. "I did not come to win you, my queen. I came only to prove that the impossible is never truly impossible." But if you choose me, then I will stand by you, not as a servant, not as a prize, but as an equal." The queen's heart trembled, the chamber of light and stone seeming to fade around her. For centuries she had been above all, unreachable, untouchable. But now, standing before her, was someone who did not see a throne, did not see a crown. He saw only her. And in that moment, the queen of the galaxy, who had denied all, gave her hand not as a ruler to her subject, but as a woman to the man who had claimed the impossible. The galaxy outside the throne of stars seemed unchanged. Suns still burned, planets still turned, and ships still crossed the void. Yet within the great chamber, everything had shifted. The queen who had denied all now stood beside a human, her hand resting in his, and the nobles could not believe what they saw. Shouts still echoed across the chamber. Some nobles cried treachery, others warned of rebellion. But their voices were no longer as strong as they once were, for the queen's gaze silenced them. A single look enough to bend even the proudest warriors into uneasy silence. She turned toward them, her gown shimmering with starlight, her crown blazing brighter than fire. Her voice cut through the air like a blade. "You question my choice, but my will is law. For centuries you have begged, threatened, fought, and failed. None of you could stand where this man stands. None of you could face my trials and live. None of you could claim what he has claimed." The nobles trembled, their voices shrinking into whispers. They had seen her reject kings without hesitation. They had seen her shatter empires with a single decree. And now she defended the human, not with cold dismissal, but with fire. Something had changed in her, something dangerous. Elias Kane stood silently beside her. He did not raise his voice, he did not gloat. He understood that the greater battle was not against beasts or puzzles, but against pride. The queen had chosen him, but the galaxy would resist. He could see it in the eyes of the nobles, hatred brewing like a storm. The queen stepped closer to him, her voice lowering so only he could hear. "You do not yet understand what you have done, human. By standing here, you have broken centuries of unshakable power. They will come for you. They will come for us both." Cain met her gaze without fear. "I have faced storms before, my queen. If they come, let them. I will not run." For the first time in her reign, she felt the weight of choice. It was not a decision forced by politics, not a strategy carved by power. It was her own heart, trembling with something she had long denied. The impossible had happened, and now she had to decide what future would shape. The chamber shifted again, doors opening as messengers rushed forward. Reports of unrest filled the air, noble houses already calling for rebellion, alien lords already whispering of war. To them, the idea that a human, a species considered weak and unworthy, could stand beside their queen was unbearable. But the queen did not falter. She raised her hand, silencing all. "Let them whisper, let them rage. I have ruled longer than their bloodlines have existed. If they wish to test me, they will remember why their ancestors bowed, and they will bow again." Her words struck like thunder, and the nobles lowered their heads, unwilling to challenge her openly. But in the shadows of their eyes, Cain saw the truth. Rebellion had already taken root. The queen turned back to him, her voice softer now. "I have chosen you, but know this, human. You are not my prize, and you are not my servant. If you stand at my side, it will be as my equal. Do you accept this burden, knowing it will bring war?" Cain nodded, his voice firm. "I accept, not because of the throne, not because of power, but because I believe in the choice we make together. If the galaxy must burn to see truth, then so be it." For the first time in centuries, the queen smiled, a true smile, small but powerful. She had ruled by fear, by pride, by the unshakable image of perfection. But now she stood not above, but beside, and it felt both terrifying and freeing. The chamber began to empty, nobles retreating, their faces pale with anger and fear. But even as they left, they knew the story would spread. Across every star system, across every empire. The Queen of the Galaxy, who had denied all, had chosen a human. And in that truth lay a storm. For some, it would be hope, proof that courage and heart could shatter even the walls of destiny. For others, it would be blasphemy, a call to arms, a reason to destroy. But the Queen did not care. Her choice had been made, and no army, no empire, no star could undo it. As the chamber dimmed, she turned once more to Cain, her voice quiet but filled with promise. This is only the beginning, Elias Cain. Together, we will change the galaxy. And the galaxy will never forget. The throne of stars had seen countless rulers, but never had it witnessed a moment like this. The Queen who once denied all now stood with a human at her side, and across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. On distant worlds, peasants whispered in awe, soldiers raised their heads in disbelief, and kings cursed in fury. The impossible had happened, and nothing would ever be the same. In the palace, silence lingered after the nobles had gone. The Queen and Elias Cain remained in the great hall, the echoes of their choice still vibrating in the air. She turned to him, her gaze softer than it had ever been, though her power still filled the room like fire. "For centuries I thought no one could ever reach me," she said, her voice quiet. "But you did, not with armies, not with treasures, but with heart." Cain met her eyes, his face calm, but his soul heavy with the weight of what was coming. He knew their union would not be celebrated. He knew the galaxy would rise against them. But he also knew the truth, that change never comes without struggle, and hope never lives without sacrifice. "I did not come here to conquer you," he said. "I came because I believe the impossible could be broken, and now it has. The question is, what do we build from it?" The Queen studied him, her cold heart slowly melting into something she had not felt in ages. Her pride, once her armor, now became her strength to protect more than herself. Together, they would not only rule, but redefine what it meant to rule. For the first time, she did not see herself as untouchable, but as a woman with a partner beside her. Outside the palace, storms of unrest brewed. Houses of power plotted rebellion. Empires whispered of betrayal. But there were also voices of hope, voices that spoke of courage, of a man who stood alone against the trials and prevailed. For many across the stars, Elias Cain became more than a man. He became a symbol, proof that the smallest flame could challenge the darkness. The Queen gathered her council, her voice sharp as steel. "Let them rise," she declared. "We will not hide, we will not bow. If they bring war, then the stars themselves will witness our stand." The nobles who once mocked her now trembled, for there was fire in her words that even they could not deny. Beside her, Cain placed his hand on the crystal table where maps of galaxies burned with light. "We do not fight for thrones," he said. "We fight for truth, for those who are forgotten, for the voices lost in the void. If they call it rebellion, then let it be rebellion. If they call it impossible, then let us prove them wrong again." The Queen looked at him, and for the first time, she felt what she had long believed herself incapable of feeling: trust. Her power had always been her weapon, her pride her shield. But Cain's strength was different. It did not demand, it inspired. Together, they were no longer just ruler and challenger. They were a force that could shake the galaxy itself. As the suns of 1,000 systems rose and set, the story spread further. Children whispered the tale in the dark. Soldiers carried it into battle, and lovers repeated it under alien skies. The Queen who denied all, and the human who claimed the impossible. It became more than a story, it became a legend. One evening, as the stars shimmered above the palace, the Queen stood on her balcony with Cain beside her. Below them stretched the endless sea of lights, fleets of ships, and cities carved into moons. The Queen whispered softly, words only he could hear. "They will fight us. They will try to tear us apart. But no matter how the galaxy shifts, I will not deny you. Not now, not ever." Cain looked out at the horizon, his scars glowing faintly in the starlight. "Then let this be the dawn," he said. the dawn of a new galaxy, one not ruled by fear, but by courage. Not by pride, but by truth. The queen closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of eternity pressing against her. For centuries she had been a symbol of denial, of rejection, of pride untouchable. But now, with one human, everything had changed. She was no longer untouchable. She was no longer alone. And so the galaxy shifted, not with the sound of war yet, but with the sound of hearts awakening. A queen had chosen, a human had claimed, and together they stood at the edge of destiny. The stars themselves seemed to bend, as if even the universe knew. This was the beginning of something greater. This was the new dawn,